The company is Heaven Your Way. My name is Charles Marshall, the project's creator and founder.
This is Diversified Game.
A podcast giving entrepreneurial advice from a diverse and inclusive perspective with Kellen.
He may agree, he may oppose, and it's more than just race, it's about, ideas.
So, let the game begin.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, this is a real unique episode. I have, and I don't think anybody else has done an interview like this with a person who is creating an audio Bible, and he's going to give us the game. Charles Marshall, Heaven Your Way. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you, Keelan. I appreciate you having me on your podcast. This is really exciting. Thank you, sir.
Well, I want, when you had reached out and I told you your project, I had tried to start. And again, people, I don't have all successes, but I tried to start something like this. And it's difficult to get this many people together to create an audio Bible and have them do it on time. So I just want you to tell the people what you're doing so we can highlight it and we all can support you and your project to the best of our ability. So please share the game.
Well, I appreciate it. I think, one of the things for me was that, sort of the concept of the project and really the vision behind the project is what grew the legs. So it wasn't even necessarily me. In fact, if you speak to any of the artists that are on the project, they'll all tell you that, Charles tells us all the time that this is not his project. It's just his idea. It was really supported by, the artist and their understanding of the vision that I was trying to create. And so that really had more to do with it than anything. And it certainly wasn't me because, who am I, right? But the idea and the concept came about for me really when just sort of witnessing what was happening nationally, throughout the country. And of course, then there were, situations that were happening all over the world. And one of the things that I noticed was that we were starting to notice, varying behavioral patterns throughout the country, and nobody could quite figure out what that was about. I had spoken to various religious leaders around the country. I'd reached out to politicians. I was so bold that I actually sent a letter to the Vatican addressed to Pope Francis. And you're welcome to get a copy of that, by the way. It's a really heartfelt letter. Just seeking understanding of what was happening in society. And so the more and more I sort of dove into this, I started recognizing that the effects of COVID-19, the pandemic, was really sort of the culprit, if you will. A lot of people were going through, great bouts of depression from being locked in their homes. And, when you talk about humans being very social animals, this pandemic has really shone a light on how social and how much interactivity we need as a species. And so with that, I just started thinking about a way to try and help lift the spirit of not only Americans, but people around the world. And so I came up with the idea after sort of watching what was happening. And then, of course, when George Floyd was murdered, that was really sort of the catalyst that sparked me to really push it forward. I had an opportunity to speak with, again, lots of clergy, lots of bishops, clinical psychiatrists that I'd call. And a lot of these people I don't know personally. I would just send them emails with the hopes that they would respond, right? And surprisingly enough, people did respond. And they didn't have answers to the situations that we were seeing. And, one of the guys that I spoke to, which was the Fraternal Order of Police, his name is Patrick Yos. In fact, he's the president of that organization. He talked about new policies that they were trying to implement and so forth. And I thought, well, that's not really going to get it done. Even though I'm not a trained psychiatrist or a psychologist or anything, I just felt like we needed something different. And the idea of the Bible app came about because it was really just my desire to try and help society, to help the country and to help the world and to bring relief and to bring a little joy to people. And so one day I just woke up and said, I'm going to do this Bible app. And I would sit down in front of YouTube for, hours. I would start at 4:00 in the morning and I would just look at videos of every single artist on YouTube. And I'd do that until 9:00 in the morning. And from 9:00 till 9:00 at night, 9 a.m. in the morning till 9 at night, I would send emails to all of these artists and say, look, guys, it's our individual responsibility to help lift us out of despair. And I think that message really resonated with all of these artists. So again, it wasn't necessarily me, it was their desire as well as mine to try and do something positive for the country and for the rest of the world. And that really, really got everything going. And I think that, some of the artists that I spoke to, of course, they had other relationships. When you talk to people like, as an example, if you talk to, get people on board like, an artist like a John P. Key or a Fred Hammonds or Dorinda Clark or, someone like that, all of a sudden the community now knows about it. And that was really a great lift. A lady by the name of Sheila Bell came in and was really instrumental in working with me on that. She does a report called the Bell Report that she puts out to the community. I think it's twice a week. And then, of course, you had, country music artists out of Nashville, a gentleman by the name of Q Phillips, which is a fairly successful management firm out of Nashville. You have people like Ed Leonard, which is the president and CEO of Daywin Records. You had Crossroads label group out of North Carolina that brought a lot of bluegrass artists to the table. So it was that message, I think, that resonated with all of these artists, because when you look at the roster, it literally is amazing. From, icons of country, music legends, disco divas, believe it or not, that are on the project. So it spans the entire genre of music artists on the project. So I'm really excited about it.
And I love, the first time we talked, you had told me some of this, but the fact that it's, tell people who you were before this, because people would assume that you're just in the business, connected, maybe a preacher yourself, definitely have a radio voice. So, who were you before this project?
Well, I always joke with people and tell them I was a test pilot for UFOs. Now, that's not true, but it is funny.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not a test pilot for UFOs. What my background is, I worked in the finance industry for quite a few years. And I'm not a preacher, minister, clergy, any of those things. It was just me seeing the need to do something about what was happening in the country. I've worked on fairly complex financial models for very large institutions. I've worked with investment banks in New York. I've worked on raising capital for IPOs and the early stage funding. And that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 15 years. And of course, prior to that, I started playing piano when I was very, very young. I started playing piano when I was around 6 years old. And that became sort of my career, but that was over in 1994, and I never went back to music or the entertainment industry. So I primarily focused on creating financial models within the finance world. So no, I'm not a preacher, nor am I in the music industry. Again, I think it was just the message that resonated with all of these artists that brought them on board. And, the toughest call that you make in a situation like this, because you don't really know anyone in the industry anymore, it's always that first call, and it's once that first call, that first artist says yes, things start progressing very quickly, because I actually started preparing the artist list in March of this year. And within the first week, I think I had around 150 artists. And that was really sort of, that was based on me having discussions with a gentleman named Philip Carter that runs the Independent Music Association. So he was very instrumental in helping as well, as was Darrell. What is Darrell's last name? I can't remember his last name now. But it was the message, I think, that resonated, because it's all about being happy. It's all about spreading joy, right? So all of these artists jumped in and really made it happen, man. And so when you talked about the difficulty of getting artists to do something like this, you know, these artists are all represented by, you know, fairly significant record labels and, you know, management companies that really look out for these artists. And that can be difficult sometimes to get around that, or to get those managers to the point where they will present it to the artists. But I think by the time I got to around 300 or 400 artists, the word had gotten around the industry that we were actually doing this. So yeah, it's been an incredible experience. I can share, certainly tell you that.
Yeah, that. I mean, that in itself is amazing, because, and I'm gonna, you know, really tell you and push you and say, hey, can you please hit the Toastmaster or the NSA circuit, because it seems like it'd be a natural fit. And after dealing with all these people, you're definitely gonna have a lot to talk about. When should this project be complete? Because it's one thing to get the artist, you know, say, okay, we'll do it, but then it's okay, completion. And it's not just them turning in their work, it's then editing their work and, you know, the distribution. So what timeline are you giving yourself?
Well, so here's what I did, and I'll tell you what the timeline looks like before I dive into the process. So what we're looking at is the end of March of 2022. And there's a reason for that, which is artists are busy people, right? And so we have to work around their schedules. But because we have 1,000 recording artists on the project, we know that we can, you know, work around schedules enough that we can probably do 15 to 20 artists a day. So we're very confident that we're going to hit that timeline of March, you know, early April. Now, the organizational part of that really falls on a company called Edge Studio out of New York. I have been working with Edge now, I guess since January, when I first went to them about the project. And Edge does voiceover work. These are the premier voiceover studios in the country. I basically laid out the foundational process of how I wanted this to work. Drew up what we would consider schematics, if you will, created spreadsheets and shared that with the studio. And I said, look, I want you guys to manage and produce this entire project from start to finish. That means recording all of the artists, setting up all of the recording studios around the country. And I would argue that by the time we're done, we will have probably utilized about 300 or 400 recording studios just on the voiceover part. But they're coordinating that entire work. And it's amazing at how organized these people really are. I mean, these are true professionals, right? So when you look at their website, you see names like Disney, Warner Brothers, CBS, MetLife. I mean, just the list of Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies are endless. And so these are absolute pros at what they do. And they're pros at organizing and sort of creating the system in which we would do this. And so we're very confident that we can hit our target of March, early April for the release of the app itself.
Okay. Well, yeah. And how can the people support the project to, you know, to help that? Because not once have you mentioned, you know, the, I'm getting the vultures. I mean, the venture capitalist together on this project. So can people like pre-buy into this?
Well, yeah, and that's a very good question, because, you know, when I first started, it wasn't necessarily, you know, I didn't think about any of that stuff, because it was really just a mission that I felt I was responsible for executing. And that was to make sure I had all of the artists first. And then at that point, I thought, well, you know, I'll talk to various organizations about funding it. But the more and more I dove into this, the more and more I realized, and not just from my own sort of, you know, ability to think through these things, but because I spoke to some very high level people within the faith-based community, But I also spoke to a lot of venture capital firms that everybody wanted to invest in the project, and everybody wanted to do, they wanted it to become their project. And I was very fortunate because I met a gentleman, and I don't want to mention his name now, but he made me aware of something. He said, Charles, even though you're not a bishop or a minister or any of these things, he goes, I have to tell you that because of the very nature of the project that you're doing, and because you have 1,000 recording artists of all different denominations and different faiths, you have to be very careful about who you allow to invest in your project. And the light bulb went on, and I thought, you know what, he's absolutely right. Now, not to mention that a few record labels did show up and say, hey, who's funding this? We want to know everything there is to know about it before we allow our artists to participate. And, I was met with some resistance based on, some of the organizations, because some organizations are political, and you don't necessarily want to have this become left or right leaning a political, agenda for any, political organization. So what I decided to do was to just open it up to the general public, and we're just going to crowdfund the project. That's how we're going to do it. It remains the project of the artist. It remains the project of the people. So we're going to start crowdfunding the project starting next week. And we hope everyone will come in and support it.
No, that's great. And you've mentioned it. This whole project is what my next question is, but I'm going to ask you, what is your community give back that you are doing or that you would like to do in the future?
Well, we have some things that we're working on, myself along with Edge Studio. One thing that I do want to say, which ties directly into what you're referencing, the project will not only be 1,000 recording artists narrating the entire King James Bible. We've also put together a team of songwriters that are writing songs for every chapter in the Bible. And I think I mentioned that to you the first time we spoke. So for every chapter in the Bible, there will be a song composed for that chapter based on the storyline of that chapter. So we've been looking at different ways to utilize that as it relates to what your question, and we're still sort of working through that process at this point. But I can assure you, whatever it is, it's going to be fun and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and I want to make sure I don't try to oversell it, because if you happen to, take one thing out and I ask you, so people say, well, you said in 2021 that this thing would be a hologram and I could talk to, and it's like, no, we don't want to set you up in that way.
You're right.
That
well, but the one thing I will say is that because of the very nature of what we're doing. So I work with a company called Clavax, CLAVAX. That is the app developer for the project, for the app itself. Now, what I can share with you, at least on a very rudimentary level, is that there are components and functionality within this particular app that doesn't exist anywhere else. So imagine you're on the app, you have the opportunity to pick an artist, interaction with that artist directly from that app. Imagine being able to have FaceTime with those artists on this app. There's no other app in the market like it. So because of the way we've laid this out, it is very unique to the app market, particularly as it pertains to the Bible apps themselves, because I think there's probably 4,000 apps in the market, but there is absolutely nothing in the market like this.
Now, nothing like this being out there. How do you humble yourself? So when, everything is complete and done and you have, your Amazons, your Audibles and everybody else saying, this is a great thing. I know you said it's for the people, but we're seeing the big M's, possibly the billions, behind it. After you've done that, how do you humble yourself to say, this is how I want to structure it? Because, people say power corrupts, but money sometimes can change people if they don't know where they're headed.
And that's a good question too. In fact, one of the things that, and again, I share this because it's true. This is not my project. I came up with the idea. This wasn't designed as a project to sort of rack up money. And I'm going to ask you a question, and you may know this guy. His name is Aloe Black. Do you know that name?
I don't.
Aloe Black did an amazing song, man, and I just remember hearing it almost every day for like a couple of years, And I saw him on a show he was on, I think, with Trevor Noah, talk show, late night talk show host. And he talked about the fact that he had the most popular song and the most downloaded or most streamed song in the world. And he talked about the income that he made from that. And it was so minuscule. I literally sent him an email that night when I saw his interview, because I said to him, I said, listen, I need to talk to you because there are things that I know that you can do. So the industry, and again, this is all based on what I'm hearing from 1,000 recording artists, right? That industry has changed drastically. And it's incredibly challenging for artists now, particularly the smaller independent artists, to make a way or to make a living from their craft and from their art. So I have been thinking about a way to embrace them because, what they're doing for us on this app, and when I say us, I mean the world, what these artists are doing for us, they deserve something for this. And my goal is to make sure that they get compensated down the road for this kind of work. So it wasn't about money for me at all. In fact, I'll tell you how it's not about money. I came up with the idea and I actually offered to give this project to the Gospel Music Association. Patents and everything. I said, look, you guys should do this because this is what you do. You're qualified, and I just think that you guys would do a great job. They said, no, Charles, this is your vision. You have to do it. I literally tried to give it away to 3 other companies, and no one would do it because they said, Charles, this is your vision. You have to do this. And I took it on because I can assure you, I had never thought in a million years I would do anything like this, right? So I believe me, I'm grateful that I did because now I've gotten a chance to meet and talk to some of the most amazing recording artists in the world. So I think when you are around those sort of people, they keep you humble, right? Because without them, this is not a project without them. So if there's $1 billion made, it goes to the artist. If there's $1 made, it goes to the artist. Again, this isn't even my profession, right? So, it's just something I want to do, man. I'll be honest with you,
Well, with this not being your profession and having a great voice for radio, great microphone, do you see yourself going around and getting on the speakers, tour and, talking about this? Is that something you even entertain?
I was just asked about that from someone at MSNBC, and I hadn't really given that any thought because I've been so engulfed in what I'm working on at this point. But I'm certainly not opposed to going out and making a presentation about the project. What I would really like to do, and in fact, I've already asked some of the artists if they would do interviews for the project so that it doesn't turn into a project about me. You know what I mean? So if these artists that are on the project wouldn't mind going out doing the interviews, yeah, they can do them or I can do them. So again, I'm not opposed to doing that. But I think I want to keep the central focus on the project and the project's vision and purpose. So I think a lot of times when you become sort of the face of the organization or sort of the spokesman for that brand, if you're not careful, it can become about you. And I don't ever want that to happen with this project. I would be happy if you did it. You're a great guy, so I can assure it's not something that I aspire to do. Let's put it that way. But if I have to, I would be happy to do it.
And I could definitely see how the artist would say yes, because I know even for myself, I'd say, "Oh, sure, let's talk about this," and it's and you can switch it off so no one gets the big head, because it's so easy to just believe your own hype, just so easy to fall into that and say, "Oh, yes, my chest is poked out," and but we're really just all a grain of sand, and with unity. And with everybody, with unity, we all win is a hashtag I love to share, because it's never about me. I mean, ever.
Well, let me just tell you a funny story. So when I started this, I just remember, getting the first few artists and thinking to myself, wow, these people are incredible. And I would be so happy all day, right? Till 9 o'clock at night, I'd pass out, go to sleep. And I would think to myself, I literally just heard the most amazing artist in the world today. And I wake up the next morning and I come out and I start working and I hear another group of amazing artists. And I'm like, no, these are the most amazing artists I've ever heard. I went through that every single day. And I'm telling you, there are people that are on this project that I've gotten to know personally now. So when you talk to these people, and that's why I'm setting the app up the way I am, so that there is direct communication with these artists, because I think once people really get to know who these artists are, they're going to gain a whole new level of respect for these people. You get to know their families, you get to know their career aspirations, you get to hear about how they arrived. I mean, so I have 1,000 people that I'm humbled in front of every single day. So it's impossible for me to stick my chest out, because there's a lady right now, and I believe she's in Carolina. Her name is Denise Teschner. I just happened to hear her one day, and I remember calling her up, and I couldn't believe this woman. Absolutely incredible. There's another gentleman out in Texas, country singer, reached out to him. And he said, oh, yeah, I've got some hits. I've won Grammys. I've won this. I've won that. And we just talked. We talked for probably an hour. And an incredible vocalist. Just amazing, And of course, you got, people like CeCe Winans and, all the usual, amazing artists. Another guy that I love is a guy named Marshall. What is Marshall's last name? I can't remember all these people. But these people keep you humble. The minute you think you are, all you have to do is listen to them and you go, okay, they're it, right?
Yeah.
So you find yourself just being grateful to be in the company of such incredible, artists.
No, this is great stuff. Where can people connect? And we can put this out whenever it's right and ready for them to go. But yeah, where can people connect to, download the app or, help with the crowdfunding?
Yeah, so we're actually launching it, as I said, next week. And it might even be later this week, because we're just waiting for a few items to be done. But if they go to www.heavenyourway.com, it will open the door for all to see, and you'll see a lot of the artists that are on the project. You'll see a lot of the crowdfunding material that's on the website, a lot of videos explaining what the project is. The crowdfunding is going to start, and you go to heavenyourway.com, and that's where you can find us. We're also going to be on all of the social media platforms that will also launch here in a few days. So I would love to have everyone come in and help support the project. Really looking forward to it.
Well, you guys, by the time this airs, you can go right to those sites. You can check the description box. You can tap in, click in. Maybe, hey, there's some interesting rewards there for you, early birds. It's kind of like for you qualified investors. You guys get it first. So this allows everyone to be a qualified investor, and you can go download, tap in, because this will be game changing. And we thank you, for coming on and sharing it with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
You guys have been blessed by the game. Make sure you share this with someone. It will change their life. Be blessed, y'all.
Hi guys, I'm Kai Gabiam from the Diaspora channel, a lover of Africa. If you love Africa as well and you would love to visit one day or to relocate to Africa, there is a course out there for you. And this course is My First Trip to Africa, a course well put together by a seasoned traveler, Kellen Cash Coleman. This course is designed to prepare you to travel better, which will save you both time and money. And the great news is this course costs only $20, guys. It can't get any better. Go right now and enroll to this course at www.diversifiedgame.com. Don't miss out.
Thanks for getting in the game and listening to the Diversified Game podcast with Kellen, the #1 show pairing entrepreneurship with diverse and inclusive perspectives like wine and cheese, bagel and lox, fish and grits. Be sure to visit diversifiedgame.com for all the good stuff. Join in the conversation and discover more content.